Welcome, mortals. Guns, God, and a whole lot of trouble. We're diving deep into the Waco siege and the disturbing world of David Koresh on the Parallax Podcast.
Welcome back, mortals.
Welcome back, mortal. This is a massive topic.
Oh, yeah. This episode is being brought to you by The Rapture.
Brought to you by The Rapture.
If you survived The Rapture, you're listening now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The Rapture that at the time of this recording was supposed to happen a few weeks ago. And let me tell you guys, I didn't know anything about The Rapture. As you guys know, if you've been listening to this podcast, most of what I know about religion either comes from like what I hear from my husband who's Catholic or from Karisa, because I wasn't raised incredibly religious. I knew of the Bible, I knew of like the basic teachings, but I wasn't the kid who like went to Sunday school or church every Sunday. So I didn't really know about the Rapture. And then Karissa was like, did you know, like she texted me, I think the week of, and was like, did you know the Rapture is supposed to happen on Tuesday? And I was like, that's really random. On Tuesday.
I say that as a person who watched people thinking it was happening. I didn't think it was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. But I didn't even know that was a trend either. That people were like, oh, the Rapture's gonna happen, and then we're still here.
I remember being in middle school, and I'm at the dining table in the kitchen with my mom and her telling me, you know, someone's trying to predict that the Rapture's coming today. And I remember feeling a dread and a fear. But I also remember at that same moment, my mom reminding me of a scripture in Matthew that Jesus is saying, no one knows. And Jesus is literally saying, I don't even know. Only my Father knows. So when I heard that scripture, that has always given me a peace of mind that no one will know the second coming. Which
it's just going to happen.
So we're going to talk about that. But the reason we're not really talking about the Rapture, because guys, it didn't happen.
No. Okay. We're still here.
We're still here. Yeah, and I still see some of the most saintly people still here, so we're good.
We're all good to go.
We're all good to go. Yeah. So we are diving into a cult from my childhood because I thought, what better way to kind of talk about these prophecies and things than one who prophesied of the second coming? And so we're going to talk about David Koresh. And Willow and I are going to go back and forth. This is going to be a fun episode because I remember this story, watching it on TV. And I know you talked to your dad about it because he was a part of it when he was growing up.
Yeah, I'm say I was not alive, but my dad was. And so I called him and asked him kind of what it was like for him so I could get a little bit of an idea, because I couldn't talk to you because we don't talk to each other about the episodes really until we come here to record. And so I'd asked him what it was like for him to watch this happening, you know, on TV and such. And he was telling me
very
about
intriguing.
It. Yeah.
I'm excited to meet your dad this weekend and kind of get a take on who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, because Dad's interesting. Like he's an extremely open-minded individual. He really is. He's very like curious about the world. But he also took, I think it might have just been one, but he might have taken more, philosophy classes as some of his like extracurriculars and such when he was going through school. And so he's just a really interesting person to talk to, especially when you get into more philosophical conversations, because he's really got some interesting theories and such to bring to the table. And so that was really fun, especially talking to him about this whole situation with David Koresh and what was happening and his understanding not only of what happened back then, which is very much along the same lines as what was most commonly reported in the news, but his thoughts a little bit on the whole ideology behind the Rapture. So it'd be fun to hear, you know, your thoughts on it, but also obviously your research and such into what the cult actually was. And then compare it subconsciously to what my dad said.
Yeah. So for me personally, I remember watching this every day during the standoff and thinking, what the heck? Because this is where I feel a core memory for me happened. Yeah, but I didn't know what the ATF was then. But I remember watching this and the gray of whenever I think of a compound, I always think of Waco, Texas. I always think of when I
Wow.
think of a cult because it was a part of a timeline when I was growing up and like, things were being molded in my head for memories. And I remember the Waco, Texas situation and how intense it was and how I can't imagine how scared the people were, which I know you're going to present that. But
Yes, yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
it's surreal. I will go ahead and say here too, for those who also were not alive when this happened, or who were perhaps just young enough to not really understand what was going
understand what
on
was
or really
going on.
remember it very well,
Hmm.
there is a docu-series, like a three-part docu-series on Netflix called Waco, American Apocalypse. And they interviewed not only the people who were involved, like the negotiators, the snipers who were in the hostage rescue team,
Hmm.
as well as several ATF agents, but they also interviewed people who were there in the compound. They interviewed previous Branch Davidians who had survived. And it's listening to these people talk about their experience, like especially the Branch Davidians, hearing
Hmm.
their perspective is insane. It's
Hmm.
just insane. So that's definitely something I'm going to talk about today because I don't really think that their perspective gets told very often.
Oh yeah. And perspectives are just like opinions. You have that one, you have the
Oh,
one,
yeah.
and then you have the truth.
Yes.
There's always
Yes.
versions for sure.
Very true.
So yeah, so David Koresh, the guy we're talking about, he was born, that was not his name. He was born Vernon Wayne Howell.
Yeah.
And he was the leader at the time of the Branch Davidians, which the Branch Davidians, they actually were a break off from the Seventh-day Adventist Church,
Yep.
which is that is a really cool church to dive into. Their Sabbath is on Saturday. They I'm pretty sure they're most part of them are vegans, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look that
Oh,
up. I know
fun.
that,
Interesting.
or vegetarians or something like that. They
Something,
don't.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, they have a very strict diet. I'm pretty sure. That's a side fact. I don't even know. But anyways, they kind of broke away from the Seventh-day Adventists back in the 1930s. Their beliefs center around the end times prophecies, and they adhere strictly to the biblical interpretation of it. So the original figures were led by this guy named Victor Hutef, and which is interesting because his initials are what Vernon Wayne Howe, which was David Koresh's same initials. But anyways, which
Yeah.
later on it becomes David Koresh. But they believed that they were the true remnant of God's people that were chosen to prepare for the second coming of Christ. And Koresh, in
Oh.
particular, claimed that he was the final prophet and this lamb of revelation that
Hmm.
was teaching that he alone could unlock the mysteries of the seven seals of the book of Revelation.
And one
Um,
thing I'm going to interject
go for
super
it.
quick here. One thing that I read about was that when he was younger, he very quickly formed a little bit of an obsession over the Bible because he struggled so much in school due to dyslexia and just poor eyesight in general, which was not well understood back
Yeah, I
in
remember
the
his
like,
glasses. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so because he couldn't interpret visual information in the same way as the rest of his peers, he was put into special education classes. So he really had a very lonely childhood and he spent most of that time reading the Bible. And when I say that he had a little bit of an obsession to it, by the age of 12, he had already memorized and interpreted the
Hmm.
entirety of the New Testament. So him talking about like, oh, I know what to do with the seven seals, blah, blah, blah. Like this man knew the Bible, honestly, at least like, could had it memorized. He probably knew it better than most like pastors and priests and such.
And I do reference the David Koresh and the Waco situation a lot in a lot of situations where people are like, well, they really know their Bible really well. I'm like, well, so did David Koresh.
So did he. So
I
did
mean,
he. And did he
I
do
say
good
that
with
a
it? No.
lot, especially if I'm talking with my mom and when she's talking about someone in church, she's like, oh, they
Hmm.
just seem to know the Bible so well. I'm like, that does not make them a good person because David Koresh memorized the Bible. He was known
Hmm.
for his biblical memorization. He was known for being charismatic, his preaching style with his deep knowledge of the Bible. He had this presentation of knowing so much about the Bible that drew people in thinking that was the
Yes.
guiding point. Yes.
Yes. Just because you can interpret the Bible a certain way does not mean that that is necessarily the correct or ethical way to interpret it and use
Well,
the
yeah, it was
teachings.
used as a manipulation tool. It was alluring. It was like a worm on a hook
Yep.
for
Yeah.
someone seeking like a fellowship, I should say. Yeah. All right. So do you want to learn about what the seven seals are, or the second coming?
Let's do. Oh, geez.
Because those are
Let's do like a.
those are 2 points of what they taught.
Yeah, let's do the seven seals because I literally don't know anything about the seven seals, and then second coming since that's kind of what he was claiming.
Okay. So the seven seals are like a series of apocalyptic visions. Just for people listening, the word apocalypse is used in the wrong text when people are like, oh, the apocalypse, the end of times. The apocalypse is literally just a change. Jesus talked about apocalypse. Apocalypse were just different versions in history where there was going to be a shift. So the seven seals are a series of apocalyptic visions described in the book of Revelation. It's around chapters 5 through 8 in the New Testament. But they're a part of this scroll that is held at the right hand of God. And each seal, when broken, reveals a new vision or event that leads to the culmination of God's plan for the world. So the seals are often interpreted to be these representing keys to events or judgments that will occur at the end of the time. The first seal is the white horse. The second seal is the red horse. The third seal is the black horse. The fourth seal is the pale horse. The fifth seal is the martyrs. The sixth seal is the cosmic disturbances, and the seventh seal is the silence in heaven.
Cool. So you start with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and then on from there. Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah. So the group believed they were the 144. I'm sure you may have heard of the 144,000 that are mentioned in Revelation.
Yes.
So yeah, this was a Seventh-day Adventist thing. This is Jehovah's Witness thing. This is taught a lot in a lot of Protestant faiths. This is like a dispensation type thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the 144,000 are mentioned in Revelation. These are a special group of people who would be saved during the apocalyptic battle between good and evil. They saw them. The Branch Davidians saw themselves as this living in the end times as those people, expecting them to be the final ones to confront evil forces, which is often saw in this situation as the federal government. The ATF was
that's true. Yeah, that was a big belief of David Koresh, where he'd sit there and he would say to his people that, like, he literally was telling them that they were preparing for war against the federal government, and that's why they were like stockpiling their weapons and such, because it was going to be I think he ended up saying or claiming something along the lines of that what was supposed to happen was they were supposed to go to war with the federal government. It was going to end guns blazing or fire blazing or whatever. And then David was going to come back with the army of God to like strike them down. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was an intense standoff. I remember even as a kid thinking it just seemed so crazy because there were kids inside. And I can
only... And I just was sitting there like watching this documentary. And the first time I watched it, I was just like fascinated because I didn't know anything about Waco really. And then the second time I was watching it, I watched it yesterday to kind of like prepare myself, before we were going to record. And it really, I mean, watching these people talk about what happened to them and their experience was just, especially there was one person on there who was 9 years old when this happened, and watching her talk about it and watching her cry because she's just like remembering what happened. I was like, this is insane. Like I almost say incredible, not in the good sense, but incredible as in like incredulous. Like I can't believe this was real,
Yeah. Oh yeah. It can't imagine, because as a child, that's when you're impressionable and you think that is just how it is. And then when you see things different, like that's not how I was raised. I didn't know that. Like, da, da, da.
Yeah. Yeah. These poor children.
So the idea of the second coming of Christ has been a central part of Christianity's belief since the early days of the faith, rooted in the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament. I mean, that's a big thing after he died and after he was resurrected, or before he was resurrected and spent 40 days and 40 nights on earth. And then he left earth. He said he would come back. So in the Gospels, Jesus speaks about returning to the glory to judge the living and the dead. and that this promise is kind of echoed in the writings of the First Thessalonians, and that's where people get the rapture from. When people were talking about taken up in the air, some of the original words were snatched, and some of the Latin words and stuff that the rapu, like the rapture and stuff like that. A lot of that stuff came from Thessalonians, but the Branch Davidians didn't teach the rapture, like the pre-rapture stuff, like you're going to be taken up before the end of times. They didn't teach that. But the promises of these writings of the second coming are in First Thessalonians and in Revelation, where he is to return. His return is described as like this dramatic, world-changing event. Like the skies will be red. There's all these things that are described in the second coming.
Like, you'll know.
You'll know, yeah.
You'll know for sure, yeah.
You'll know, but then they also say when he comes back, you won't recognize him. And I used to, as a child, think, how will someone not know Jesus? And he's that white man that's on the pictures. Guess what? Probably not.
He was not, most likely not white.
Not white. Right?
That's why we won't recognize him, because he's been whitewashed.
Well, his return is described as dramatic, world-changing event, like I said. Early Christians included figures like Paul and John believed this return was imminent. Like the Jehovah's Witnesses actually had an original timeline when the second coming was happening. And then when it didn't happen, people were like, wait, why didn't it happen? They're like, oh, this, and this. And then they gave you a new date, and like it kept changing. I'm like, why are y'all still here?
Like it's still not happening.
Yeah, they believed in a sense of urgency. They thought Jesus would come and save them from the physical world's dominance.
Like they thought he was going to come back like almost
and take over the government, run as their king. But he is the king spiritually. And so they were losing the connection. Over time, as the second coming didn't happen as quickly as expected, theologians like Augustine and them began to interpret it more symbolically. And they changed the interpretation and the preparation for Christ's return that was going to be happening in later dates. I mean, there was like stuff through the Middle Ages, people just trying to predict it. And that's where we have the predictions of the rapture. But then people like... trying to say this is the end of times or blah, blah, blah. And so Koresh began to teach that he was the final prophet chosen by God to reveal the true meaning of the end of times. He claimed that he had received divine revelation and that it allowed him to interpret the 7 seals of the book, because that's the thing. No one can interpret the 7 seals. That's like the great mystery, which he believed were the key to understanding the coming of the apocalypse. And Koresh taught his people, of the Branch Davidians, that they were the 144,000 people mentioned in Revelation 7:4, and that they would be sealed and protected during the end times. So,
and didn't he? I think it was when he went, like when he was in Israel. He had gone there. I don't know if it was a pilgrimage or to gather more followers, but I think that was when he had said that he had had the vision that he was like the prophet, or that he was the second coming.
So in the late 1980s, this is kind of like when all this is happening. Yes, he had escalated his claims, declaring himself not only the last prophet but the Messiah himself. Yeah, and that he was the Lamb of Revelation. Yes, he escalated his position in the Godhead for sure. He taught that he was destined to lead the Branch Davidians through the apocalyptic battle, like he had said before, but he would precede the second coming of Christ. Koresh believed that he would establish a new kingdom on earth after the final battle, and that there would be this faithful reign with Christ and Koresh like together. So it's very, very interesting. Yes.
It is so interesting.
Yes, the Branch Davidians emphasize this spiritual purity. Like this is where like the cult's getting more intense. They're collecting their weapons. You got this compound. They have this strict adherence to the biblical law, and they need to separate themselves from mainstream society. So they really need to kind of get away and be away from the corrupt world. Their beliefs ultimately led to what you're about to talk about is the Waco siege of 1993 and the standoff with the authorities in Waco, Texas, at the compound with the people of the Branch Davidians. So take it away.
All right. So I'm not going to get, I want to share kind of the internal perspective, so to speak, of what was happening. I'm not going to get into too much detail about exactly what happened, simply because y'all can go find that everywhere, honestly.
Or you can watch the Netflix series.
Exactly. You can go on Netflix, you can see the entire thing. But I just want to kind of give more of the inside perspective because I feel like, especially when I was just doing research into the siege itself, I was finding the perspective of ATF. I was finding the perspective of like the news and here's what happened, here's the date, here's the time, yada, yada, yada. But I wasn't hearing or finding a whole lot about like, well, what about the people inside the compound
That survived.
yeah, that survived, who like this was real to them, their beliefs, that was reality to them. What was it like for them? So we're kind of going to get into.
Did you find out how many people died in that thing?
I did.
I know that there were a lot of people.
Let me see if I can scroll and find that because I did. I found a number.
And I remember it was a hot topic of like who caused the firing, who caused the first fire? Did it come from inside or come from outside?
I do have something on that.
Yeah.
Of what they think because they still don't really know 100%, but they've got their thoughts on how they think it might have happened. But again, the history books are written by the winners. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So
Preach.
well, yeah, whether or not this is true. Gosh, I did find a number. It was like, it was sad. It was like 100 and something died and only 9 people survived the fire.
Okay, continue with yours. I'll chime in. I will look it up. You give me your stuff.
Because I know I had it written down. I just can't find where it is.
If you come across it, that's fine. If not,
yeah, I
will look it up while you're talking.
Here we go. So these people, the Branch Davidians that lived within this compound, there were men, women, and children. Like there were entire family units who lived within this compound. There were children who were born within the compound that they were raised and to have these beliefs that David Koresh had. The children would all be taken care of and raised together by all the women. There was a Branch Davidian who was interviewed in the documentary, and she said it was like having 100 moms because everybody's just watching the children together. They were taught too that the apocalypse was going to unfold on their property, which for them it kind of did, which is a really sad irony. But there would be a war, the federal government was going to come after them, and that's when they started, stockpiling the guns. They would go to different gun shows across the country so they could purchase guns and take them back. Their kids were taught how to load and shoot the guns. So like all the children knew how to use these weapons. And for those Branch Davidians that would join the compound later on, like who weren't, born and decided to go into it, they said that it was in Texas, so it's not really that weird to have guns. It's not really that weird to know how to shoot the guns. But then again, they're also being taught all these different things from David Koresh. So I think that their viewpoint was a little bit skewed, but So the reason why ATF got involved in the first place was because a local sheriff called for them after a local mail carrier saw a whole entire grenade fall out of a broken box.
I did not know that.
They ended up calling up. It was either a grenade or it was part of a grenade. And they were like, oh, that's illegal. And then they ended up calling in ATF because they knew already that they were not equipped to handle that on their own. So February 28th, 1993 was when the warrant was made to arrest Koresh and seize the weapons. The agents ended up taking control over a house that was nearby the compound. They didn't go to the compound directly right off the bat. And the reason why the Davidians got tipped off that the ATF agents were coming to them was because there was one person who worked as a mail carrier who lived on the compound, and he was doing his normal route to deliver mail and such. And these TV reporters had been tipped off that ATF was going to the compound. And so they were trying to go to the compound so they could get their story. And one of the photographers got lost and just so happened to come across this mail carrier and ask for directions to the compound. And the mail carrier, it's insane. And he was like, oh, why are you looking for the compound? And he goes, oh, well, ATF is about to conduct a raid. And the reporter didn't know
Why do
that the mail
reporters do
carrier
stupid stuff
lived.
like that?
I know. And again, this reporter had no idea that the mail carrier he was talking to literally lived on that compound.
Ugh.
And
And they wonder
so,
why the cops don't want to share anything with them because y'all can't keep your
right?
mouth shut and
Because
you're
of
ruining the
this.
surprise.
And honest to God, the carnage that comes after
76
is,
people.
yeah,
76 people. I looked it up. 76 people and a little over 20 of those were children.
yeah, a lot of children died. This entire carnage is honestly due to the fact that they were tipped off and they had time to prepare to shoot and to fight, which is I can't believe if he just wasn't on that road, if he got lost on any other road,
Yes.
then
And be like,
maybe
why wouldn't you just say, I'm just going to go interview someone or like whatever?
right? No, it's wild to me. So the mailman immediately turns around and goes back to the compound and alerts David Koresh. And after that, got the word out. Everybody started getting their guns, all the weapons. Like they were literally arming themselves with grenades, all the different guns. They had like strategic high points on the compound where they could put guns that would be able to fire through armor. I have it written down
Yeah,
here.
the armor piercing bullets.
Yes, where they had those guns up there at the higher turrets almost, so to speak. And they ended up, the ATF had an undercover agent who was in the Branch Davidians. He was able to get away from them to tell the ATF that they had been tipped off. And there's an ATF agent that they interviewed during that documentary, and he said that he had tried, because he was higher ranking, and he had tried to tell them that they shouldn't go, because he was like, they know they are heavily armed. We should not go today. Like, we need to, now that we've lost the element of surprise, we need to rethink this. And like, nope, we're going to go.
Yeah.
And he like regrets that so much, because he's like, I told them that we should not have gone that day. And now,
he shouldn't regret the fact that he tried to warn them.
I think it just weighs heavily on him. Like I think he wishes maybe he'd done more, which what could you have done? Like this is your job. You're answering to somebody else. It's ultimately not your decision. But, so what they ended up doing, the ATF agents all loaded into these trucks that they covered the canvas so that they were somewhat disguised so they could head out to the compound. And this ATF agent talked about how when they were in the truck, and they're like filled to the brim of ATF agents, and one of them ended up reaching back and like squeezing the hand of the agent behind him, and that just, they all started doing that kind of in a line, like the squeeze of the hand spread throughout the truck. And then he said that for some of those men, that was the last time that somebody held their hand. It was like, this is a heavy documentary to watch and to hear these people's perspectives. It was so sad. But so it's over 70 agents go to the compound. They're surrounding the compound. David Koresh himself ended up like sticking his head out of the doors and being like, hey, get off my property. Like, get off my lawn. And the agents responded with search warrant, police, like basically announcing themselves as they would. And he just disappeared back into the compound. And there was an individual named Thibodeau, who was a man who used to be a Branch Davidian. He's one of the ones who survived. And he mentioned saying that he heard someone say, hey, wait, there's women. Like he heard someone, hey, wait, like there's women in there, there's children in there. And then shots were fired. Now, we sit there and say, we don't know who fired first. One of the agents said that he heard the sound of guns that the ATF agents didn't have. So he says the Branch Davidians fired first. Some of the survivors say that the ATF agents fired first. So we don't know.
I remember a video. Was there a video on the documentary? I remember watching like a shot from a window.
There is, I believe. And again, the ATF agent states that he heard shots fired from a gun that they didn't have.
Right.
And that's when they returned fire. I don't know, and the only reason I say I don't know is because these agents knew how heavily armed the compound was, and they knew that the Davidians had already been tipped off. So they're going in there already freaked out. And
Sitting ducks.
Yeah, and you sit there and you think about now how many times gun fights have gone off because somebody thought they heard a gun, like that one cop who heard an acorn that fell on his car and ended up shooting up his own car. So,
Wow,
like,
calling
yeah.
out Okaloosa while you're at it.
Hey, you know what? Yeah. So that's why I say, like, they're going into a very charged atmosphere. So I don't know if they did. Maybe somebody got freaked out and fired because they didn't realize that it wasn't a gunshot. Who knows? But we say that we don't know. The Branch Davidians started throwing grenades out the window. The agents brought, literally ran actual legit ladders to the compound so they could climb onto the roof. And so the Davidians began shooting at the agents on the roof. There were agents who got stuck on the roof, who died on the roof, who got stuck bleeding out. Yeah. Like there was a video of them going up later once they were able to negotiate a ceasefire, of them going up to either collect the bodies or collect those who were just on the roof that they were trying to save. And you could literally, from the footage from the helicopter, you could see the pool of blood from one of the agents going down the roof. Like it's visceral. It's visceral.
Did they start shooting on the first day? Was that the shooting start on the first day?
Yeah. Yeah, the first day. The first day. This is all the first day. Yeah. And there were some women interviewed who were sitting there like they weren't actually firing anything, but they were just trying to protect their children. Like they're just there listening to this gunfire and their only goal is to protect their kids. And then there was that one that they told you about who was only 9 years old when this happened. She was in a room. They had literally just been moved, like a group of children, into this room. And this woman came in with a gun and she used like the muzzle of the gun to move aside the curtains to see and was immediately shot. And this 9-year-old girl watched this woman get shot right in front of her. It's awful. It's just awful. And she said that the one thing she can't forget is hearing people get shot, because she talked about how the pitch of their voices would change, and that's how she would know that they had been like, it's sickening. It is that, sorry guys, I probably should have put a disclaimer. This is really heavy. So just know it's going to continue to be heavy. If you choose to watch this documentary, it is a very heavy documentary. So keep that in mind. The ATF agent who I thought I wrote down his name, but apparently I didn't. But the one who was talking about, you know, when I was saying in the beginning, he had reached back and like squeezed people's hands and whatnot. He was one of the ones who actually entered the compound through a window. They would go on the roof and they would break a window and try to go in. And he said that once, for those who did get into the compound, they were shooting, like the Davidians were shooting at them through the walls. He ended up getting hit. Yeah. He got hit in the side and on his thigh. He survived, but he would talk about how he was shot and he had to crawl his way back out the window, down the roof, and ultimately was able to fall off the roof onto a golf cart that was like parked near the compound, broke a few ribs, and then he pretty much just sat there bleeding until they had negotiated the ceasefire and they were able to come get him to take him back.
Yeah, I'm laying there wondering, is this my last? Am I going to die out here?
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. And then even, so there was another agent named Kavanaugh, was his last name, and his job was to stay like back at the house that the ATF agents had control over and just like watch and relay back to their base. Okay, here's what's happening. Here's, you know, we have agents who were hurt or this, that, and the other. And he said he saw a Barrett rifle. So that's the one that can shoot the armor-piercing bullets. He saw a Barrett rifle come out of the window and they started firing at the agents like at the front. And so the gunmen, the snipers essentially next to him, began to fire at the Barrett rifle just to try and get them to like draw the gunfire away from the agents who were just, you know, vulnerable. And they obviously then began firing at Kavanaugh and the gunmen, and he was talking about just like hearing the bullets whiz by him and he was getting choked up, you know, thinking about if it was going to hit him. And during this, again, the news people are still there while this is going on. Like, there's footage of them in the car ducking, being like, all right, I'm here on scene. And I was like, leave. Are you kidding me? He's like, literally, like, we're here on scene at the siege of Waco, the compound. And you can see here our car has actually been shot right there by a bullet. And I was like, I cannot believe this man. Like, leave. Leave. I don't understand. But an agent ended up yelling at the newsman to go back and call for help because they were getting, I mean, there were so many who were hurt. There were those who were dying. So he was able to run back to his vehicle. He called the newsroom to try to tell them to get every ambulance like in the area out there. And the person said, every ambulance in the county is already there, but they can't get to you because of the gunfight. It's not safe for them to get to them. There was even Wayne Martin was a Branch Davidian who was inside the compound while this is going on. He called 911 begging them to call off the raid because he was yelling to them, there's women and children here, you need to call it off, there's women and children that you guys are going to kill. So finally, after however long this ended up happening, they were finally able to negotiate a ceasefire with David Koresh so that they could come and get their dead, come and get their injured.
What was when did it end? When did it end?
This was,
I remember it happening for a while.
Well, this is like the first gunfight.
Yeah.
They were able to negotiate a ceasefire like after they first raided. So this is still on the first day. This is still day one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot happened on day
the first
one.
Day. Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever it's Lieutenant Lynch with the local police, he was the first person to talk with David Koresh on the phone. David immediately, right off the bat, is blaming ATF. He's like, you have your people dead. So many, you have so many that have been hurt. They've been dead. It's all your fault that so many people are dead. You've ruined the country, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, buddy, I'm just trying to see if I can get my dead people off your roof. That's literally all I'm trying to do right now. Just let me get my dead and injured off your roof. So they finally were able to negotiate a ceasefire. And around that time, this is what I'm about to tell you is really heavy. I've gone through a lot of heavy stuff. This is incredibly heavy. So you may skip ahead if you want. But that woman who was 9 years old, around like right as they were negotiating the ceasefire, her grandfather was shot in the stomach. And she listened to him screaming because he had been shot in the stomach and begging for someone to kill him to put him out of his misery.
So the 9-year-old girl who watched the woman get shot, then watched her grandfather get shot. Who shot at her grandfather?
It was somebody in the ATF.
After the ceasefire.
This was right as they were like on the phone. Like they were still shooting obviously at each other. So this is right before they finally stopped.
Okay.
And another member did end up putting him out of his misery. Like a member of the Branch Davidians did end up putting him out of his misery. But she had to sit there and she had to listen to that. Like this is what it was like for them, for the Davidians inside. It's awful because there were children who were watching people around them get shot. This is their beliefs, like their beliefs about David. That is their reality. That is real to them. Mm-hmm. And they even, it's almost mind-boggling, for us at least.
I don't know if you put this in your notes, but I do know that this event and the idea that the government overstepped their power in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that they overstepped in this situation is the cause and reason. Now, he wasn't a Branch Davidian, but this particular this scenario of Waco, Texas, and the ATF inspired Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City. The Oklahoma City. The Oklahoma City. Oh my gosh! Can I talk
bomber?
Oklahoma City bomber. What the flip?
Yeah. Because only, I think about 2 years after Waco is when he did the bombing. And this was when I did my research on Timothy McVeigh. I'm not going to go too much into detail about him.
I think it was longer than that. I'm going to look at it.
And it could be, I could be wrong, but he definitely this did act as a turning point for him when he really, really became radicalized and was like, okay, I'm going to do something, because he
I
thought
think
that
yeah.
he thought that the government was wrong, which I'll get into it in just a little bit.
Yeah, it was only 2 years? Wow,
Yeah,
I thought it
only
was
2 years.
longer. Jeez, I don't know why it was in 95, and I guess I felt like it was longer than that. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. But there's even, you know, that was mainly what happened on day one, because day one was whew. And from this point on, David begins to negotiate with the FBI negotiators,
Mhm.
and he would let children go 2 by 2, specifically, if they would agree to air his messages either on like local news stations if he took a video, or on radio stations. So if he heard that something was aired, he would let 2 children go. And these parents, I mean, they would do it because they were told to by David, and he was seen as like their king, quote unquote.
I'm pretty sure he was
But
also the father of a lot of these children.
oh yeah, he was.
Mhm.
He was related to a lot of these kids. But they felt like they were sending their children to Babylon. Like, they didn't think they were saving their children. They're giving their children to the demons, to the devils, to the enemy.
Mhm.
So while we are out here like, oh, they're being saved, these parents, that's not what they think they're doing. Like,
No,
they
they're
think
like,
that
"Wait a minute, why are we giving our children to the enemy?"
yeah.
Mhm.
So it's terrifying for them to do this. They don't feel like their children are saved or safe by giving them to the government.
Mhm.
And it's also another thing I noticed when I was watching, again, the documentary. It was like a media circus when these people were released. Like, everybody's going up around them. So you get these children who have been so far removed from like the media and such. They get released from this horrible situation where they're watching people die. And now they've got cameras like shoved into their faces.
Mhm.
It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So finally, Koresh ended up taping it like a 58-minute sermon that he wanted to be broadcasted. And he said, okay, I'll come out peacefully with everybody if you agree to broadcast it. He said, I'm going to come out first, and the children 2 by 2, then the women, then the men, then a person named Steve Schneider will be last. I don't know exactly his importance, but he was going to be last. Yet, the day that happened, the sun began to set. Koresh had everybody assembled in the hallway, preparing everyone to leave. And then he started praying. And then Steve called Kavanaugh, who was one of the first negotiators, and said that David had told them all that his God said to wait. So they didn't leave.
Wait.
So he refused to leave.
Dave. So wait, hold on. So David came out, and then the rest didn't.
No, David had everybody like assembled to leave the compound. And then he started praying as they were like there ready to walk out the doors. He started praying. And then Steve, his, I guess, like right hand man or whatever, called the negotiator and said David had said that his God said to wait. So nobody left the compound.
Oh, okay. Yes. I was looking it up. He is the high-ranking Branch Davidian who chose to stay inside. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So they decide to stay. They stay inside. And during this time, like, now this is when it gets into the 51-day standoff where they're like, no, we're not going to be leaving. But the negotiators wanted to try to find out a peaceful way, because they could tell that David was not exactly all there, shall we say. And they could tell that it was going to be really tedious if they were going to get everybody out there alive. Whereas the like hostage rescue people, who are the US's like last defense, or like last thing that they go to if we have a hostage situation, we're like, no, we just need to get them out. We just need to go and get them, like go in there and get them out.
Mm-hmm.
And a Branch Davidian woman said that if they were to enter the compound, so either the hostage rescue people or ATF agents, if they were to enter the compound, there was an agreement that they would all die by suicide. And she was literally she was handed a grenade to keep on her, because they knew that she was one of the only women who would pull the pin and kill all the people surrounding her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's insane. Absolutely insane.
Is she alive? And did she speak on the?
She survived. Yeah,
was she on the
survived.
documentary?
Yeah.
What is she doing? What's she doing with her life now? Working at the local McDonald's? What's she doing?
Bro, I don't know. Actually, I do know. I just don't remember because I suck.
Stop it.
But it's like her listening to her, you get a really good idea, more or less, of how these people believed, and
how deep-seated they were.
Yeah, they were literally willing to do anything that David told them, anything at all. And so they just
did she still have that mentality when she was talking? Like
you can tell that she does a little bit. I think she sees how it's not like the way that David believed, and interpreted the Bible and such is not correct. Is not, but she still has that devotion to God. And in turn, a little bit of that leftover devotion to David Koresh. It's like somebody who hasn't fully separated themselves from what happened. Yeah. It's like maybe able to see a little bit more clearly, but also hasn't really fully.
Was she the mom of any of the children?
Yes, she was.
Did any of her children die?
No. Her two children were one of the two that were released whenever Koresh had those negotiations where he was like, I'll release children 2 by 2 if you air like my sermons and such.
So he released those 2 and then he left her in there with a device to kill everyone. And she was going to do really heavy. That is super heavy.
Yeah. And she was going to do it.
Hopefully that woman's never allowed to get on a plane.
Yeah. Yeah. Because listening to her talk about it, I was like,
girl, you are not okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh my Lord. So in the early days of the standoff too, they did end up seeing a video because he would like record videos of his sermons. They could tell that David had been shot in the side, like kind of in the stomach, but like in the side. And they could tell that it looked like he was probably developing a pretty deep-rooted infection. And so they ended up trying to see if they could convince him to come out so that they could give him medical attention. Because they're like, oh man, it looks really infected. You really ought to come out, blah, 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 blah. And of course, he didn't fall for that. But they ended up
You're the Messiah. Can't you heal yourself?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah.
Well, that's how that works. It doesn't come with the job package?
It doesn't come with a job. It's not in the job description, actually.
This is not with the plans of benefits and healthcare?
Actually, yeah, that doesn't fall under my benefits. But they did try to. They were able to negotiate here and there to get like some medical or like some food and a little bit of medical supplies in there because they wanted to get them out, but they also like the negotiators especially. They're like, we're not trying to make them just like starve and die in there. Like we need to do something to try and get them humans, to. Yeah. Even so, they tried various different strategies, including turning off the compound's electricity. They literally went and played Tibetan chants over loudspeakers, like massive loudspeakers, to try and disrupt sleep. Yeah. They set up these giant loudspeakers. They played Tibetan chants. They played like a recording of somebody. Summon. Yeah, right. What y'all doing? What sleep demons are you putting in there?
What kind of sleep demons you bringing on?
Yeah. Well, they did that. I can't remember what the recording said, but they literally had a recording of somebody just saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Then they had like one where they just played like screeches. I think they had one where they just played screaming, literally just humans screaming.
Crazy torture.
Yeah, because they were trying, and then they would shine like these massive spotlights, like with those giant LED things that literally light up as bright as day. They did that. They shined those into the compound as well.
So back then in the 90s, it was the lumens, like how many candlelights it was. And they had like the million candlelights. So it was like a million candlelights in one light. And that's what a lot of poachers would use to go out and hunt deer and stuff at night when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. And that's what they were shining into the compound to try to like disrupt sleep. And I'm like, okay, so that's torture. Great, cool. So then, convinced that Koresh was not going to surrender, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno was the one who gave permission for the FBI to finally raid the compound. So this is pretty close to towards the end of the 51-day standoff. So around 6 a.m. on April 19th, 1993, The FBI began spraying tear gas into the complex, and this was, again, terrifying for everybody in there. I think they did have gas masks. I have to check on that one, but I think they did have at least some. I don't think everybody had one, but I think they at least had some. Mm-hmm. And then in reports, it says soon thereafter, the Branch Davidians began firing. Was it firing weapons? Yeah, so they began firing weapons because, of course, they're like being attacked again because there's tear gas. And so for more than 5 hours, armored vehicles, some of which would go and like they would literally just drive into the compound. There's footage of them just driving these tanks into the walls of the compound so that they could deposit even more tear gas. There was 400 tear gas canisters into the compound.
Oh my gosh.
And there's just gaping holes now in the structure where they have just driven tanks into it. And then it says that the Davidians set several fires. Now, when they ended up doing an internal investigation afterwards, some of the tear gas the FBI used was flammable. So,
someone did not read the label.
Exactly. There was rumors that the Davidians had talked about setting fires. Now, whether or not they did, we don't know. It might have been maybe they set fires for a different reason, but because the tear gas is flammable, that is why the fire got out of control so quickly. Not entirely sure. But they also had said at 12:25 gunfire was heard inside the compound. Whether that's gunfire from the Davidians or gunfire because of just the fire like reaching the weapons, not entirely sure, but it was heard. Due to safety concerns, the firefighters weren't able to actually get into the area for another 15 minutes after the fire started. And by that time, the compound was burnt to the ground. Yeah. There were 75 bodies, 25 of which belonged to children. 9 people managed to escape. Everybody else died. A number of the deceased had been fatally shot, including Koresh. Some of the wounds did appear to be self-inflicted. So some of them did end up dying by suicide. Others were not. I wonder if this is
remember
really
the
morbid.
9 people. I remember not seeing the videos of the people running out, the ones that made it out.
Yeah. And I wonder morbidly if for some of those who had fatal wounds but hadn't been self-inflicted, if they perhaps were shot by the other Davidians, like out of mercy.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder. I don't know for sure, but given that they did that to that one person's grandfather, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did.
Or if they went in there and shot all of them and then took their own life.
Yeah, very possible. Very possible. But because I believe, and again, this is something I have to check on. I believe most of the bodies were found like in the same spot or near the same spot of those who had perished in the fire. Like they had all like walled themselves into a room and then had died in there. But the government continued for a while to say that it was not involved in starting or spreading the fire. And that's when later on it was found that the tear gas was flammable. And of course, the FBI, for the longest time, the government was like, no, we had to. But later on, Reno, who was the U.S. Attorney General, did end up saying that she regretted giving the order that they were to go and raid the compound.
Yeah, they're allowed to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, again, it's like almost painful to watch the documentary and see the perspective of the Davidians. Like, they were terrified. They're watching everyone die around them. And yet everything that they're doing is like, not only is it like David's predictions coming to fruition because there is a war happening on their property, but this is real to them. It's real. This is their reality. Like, they're fighting for what they genuinely believe, and they're being killed for it, and they're watching others around them being killed for it. It's something
Go ahead.
I was going to say, whether or not you agree with their beliefs, you have to respect the situation they were put in. You have to respect what was their reality. in what they were seeing and what they were experiencing. I don't think it's fair to sit there and say at all like, oh, they deserved it because of this and the other, or if they shot first, then ATF was just responding, whatever. This, you have to appreciate the fact that their beliefs were their reality that was real to them, and that they watched people they grew up with die around them.
Yes. Well, something else, and this is just me being devil's advocate, this all came because of a grenade. So the one thing that these people did was, and this was at a separate location in the compound, correct?
Where the grenade had fallen?
Yeah, was the grenade at one of the houses?
No, yeah, it was a separate location. I believe from how it sounded, it was like this box was going to be delivered, and then they saw a grenade fall out of it, and they were like, oh, that's illegal. So this was like shipping before it got to them, basically.
Right. So the one thing they were guilty of was shipping, which is so funny that you're using the U.S. Postal Service, the government that you're against.
Why?
Yeah, the government you're against, you're using as your postal service to deliver your illegal weapons. But, side note, they were only guilty of that one thing, and then it turned into a multitude of you, like, taking over this entire compound. Like,
yep.
You didn't go up and ask, like, you created a whole raid about one thing instead of just going up and saying, we have a warrant, we're going to search the place. It didn't kind of happen that way. It just turned into a full-fledged thing from the get-go.
And the other thing is, they went there, like, they knew about the grenade, obviously, because that was, in the midst of being shipped and they saw it. Other than that, Karissa, they went on there based on rumors. Okay? They went on there to serve a warrant to see if there was anything actually there. They didn't actually know. They just had heard of rumors. I mean, were they correct? Yes, they were. But, like...
But that's where the overstepping of the government happened.
Yeah. Y'all started this 51-day standoff. It could have been way more peaceful.
Yeah, it could have been way more peaceful. It could have ended in a lot less bloodshed, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so... The whole thing is sad. I definitely, even though it is an extremely heavy documentary to watch, I do recommend the documentary on Netflix, simply because I do believe that in order to fully appreciate and understand what happened, you need both sides of the story. You really do. And it's so much more fascinating and interesting hearing both sides, both the agents involved and the Davidians who survived, who had to experience all of that, because it's heartbreaking. Even if I don't agree with their beliefs, it was heartbreaking hearing about their experiences.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I only saw the news media side. I saw nothing else, of course, growing up, which that was in my high school years, but still.
It's hard.
Yeah. Heavy. But it's nice to take a look at it, not just choosing the side of the media or the government, but to also choose a different side of, this is their beliefs. These people were founded in, and their foundation was in this, and all of a sudden they're being attacked. It was just one day everything's normal for you, and then the very next second it's over. Your children are being shot. Your family's being shot.
Yep, and that's exactly how it happened. And that's how they believed.
And essentially, you have the right to bear arms. You have the right to bear arms, but like maybe not like full on grenades.
Maybe not that many. Not that many, and not that type. But yeah, and I think the whole right to bear arms situation, that's partially why this inspired, shall we say, Timothy McVeigh to go do what he did. For him specifically, was because of the right to bear arms. For the Davidians, they were going, they were going to die for this, because this was the rapture. This is what David taught them about.
This wasn't the rapture. Yeah, they didn't believe in the rapture.
You're right. You're right. I mean, like, maybe not proper wording, but like this was the war, I guess. This is the breaking of the seals. This was the start of This would be considered, this was what he prophesied. The second seal. This would be the second seal, I feel like. Yes. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, right now.
Alrighty. Well, this was a nice episode. Inspired by the rapture. Brought to you by the rapture.
Brought to you by the rapture. If you are still here with us, if you have survived, good job. Good on you for making it through this one, because it was a good episode, but this was a heavy one. This was a real heavy one to get through.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought their perspectives. That was nice. A nice touch to this
Yeah.
Because, you know,
It's
I mean,
important.
like you said, anybody can go watch the Waco thing on Netflix and then get your story, get your perspective. But like at the same time, we just wanted to talk about like this cult in general and leading people into a mass casualty like this of promises. So, okay. Well, if you would like to follow us for more, you can go to theparallaxpodcast.com. You can click on our little icons there and follow us on our social media, which is only Facebook and Instagram. You could also reach out to us.
TikTok stuff.
You can reach out to us at info@theparallaxpodcast.com and send us an email. But until then, thank you for listening. I'm Karissa.
And I'm Willow. Goodbye, mortals.
Later.